Hello and welcome to the World Mental Health Forum Summit in collaboration with Collaboration Global. My name is Jill Tiny, founder of Collaboration Global, and I'm delighted to have one of our members here today, the wonderful Mr. Steve Cook. Welcome, Steve. Lovely to have you on board.
Hi, Jill. Great to see you.
The thing about Steve, since I've known him, which is probably 2 or 3 years now, it goes quick, doesn't it? Obviously, we found each other on LinkedIn. God bless LinkedIn. Um, but he has always been a punk that never not grew up. Is that right? A boy that
Yeah,
never grew
grew
up,
up.
but a punk that's never kind of moved out of that space. So it's like coming back to my youth every time I talk to you because of this energy and this fun and this like um, go away for the establishment, she said politely. Um, so one of the things I wanted to share with the audience, not only about the Undaunted, which is the group that you have and that I am part of, which is so phenomenal, but also your particular struggles that when you were at school, you didn't have any insight in. We love putting labels on people now, don't we? But the labels that you have acknowledged for yourself, but also how does that impact you on a day-to-day basis? So one of our guest speakers recently talked about being neurospicy, which I quite liked. All these different neurodivergent labels we can put on each other. And she said, it's the spice that makes the life worth living. It's the fact that we have this inner genius in us, and if we channel them into the right roads, then these people are amazing. And you have a lot of spice going on, Mr. Cook. So tell us briefly what labels you discovered later on in life, whether you accept them, and what maybe your youth might have been different had you not been aware of
Wow, that's a great introduction, a great set of questions. Well, as some people know, I'm 61, and I'm late diagnosed autistic, ADHD, and PDA. It also comes with chronic anxiety, social phobia, and complex post-traumatic stress disorder because of some things that I've been through in my life. So I've got the full set pretty much, and I'll get some cocktail glasses sent to me at some point free. So the 3 years ago, my diagnosis of autism, ADHD, and PDA did what I think it does for a lot of late diagnosed people, which is it made me stop, reflect, think about past events in my life,
it.
wonder about where I go from here. And I remember announcing my diagnosis to some people, where the overwhelming reaction from everybody was, "Yeah." So it was kind of underwhelming. So I'm kind of on the one hand really happy with the diagnosis because it answers a lot of questions. It's been very heartbreaking and a lot of soul searching going on, but also incredibly joyful in
Mm.
terms of some of the things that I have that I always knew I had but didn't have a label for them. The really big one for me is PDA, pathological demand avoidance, which is a term that I don't like anyway, and I certainly don't like it in relation to me. So I've reframed it. For me, PDA is punk devoted anarchist.
I love it.
That's my way of looking at it. But
Perfect.
yeah, so I think the neurospicy, there are lots of different ways of saying things. I have learned over time, and because of the work that we do, that every time you use a term, there are as many people who celebrate it as there are people who don't like it.
Mm.
And I think we're in the middle of a kind of labeling crisis in that. And because of our wider work, the social conditioning that we all go through, and this is everybody on planet Earth,
Mm.
um, the things that lead to social conditioning and to labels being put on people for all sorts of reasons are really harmful when we're living in a divisive and polarized world.
Yes.
So neurospicy, absolutely, I completely get that. And we've done a lot of work, and I guess we'll talk about that in a minute around what these things look like. But for me personally, the realization that there's a reason why I hated school so much. There's a reason why I was always an outsider.
Yeah.
Even when I was a kid with my friends, I had lots of friends, but I was always different. In fact, I had lots of friends because I was different, interestingly.
Mm, mm,
The reason why I went through school and really hated it, the reason why I left home and gravitated at 13 and gravitated to being a punk. These things are all in me. But the thing that's most in me, which I think is hugely important now, is and this is probably the wrong way to sum it up, but a natural creativity, a natural curiosity,
mm,
a natural desire to see what happens next,
mm.
which you could call spicy, but I would call it being a career creative.
Yeah.
It's and the realization that so many people that I have spent my life with, if they were diagnosed, they almost certainly would be diagnosed ADHD. So how is that a benefit to society rather than a deficit? So we could talk about that. We
Mm.
live in a society where, and I've learned this more recently, the systems break us, then tell us that we need fixing, then try to fix us.
Yeah.
And whole industries have been built around that principle. And I'm vehemently anti that because we weren't broken in the first place.
No. No, exactly. And that's part of the problem of capitalism and consumerism is they needed to create these industries to say, well, you're too fat, or you should have this diet, or you should eat these things, or whatever. And this is a superfood, and it's just food. It's just, understanding all those kind of things. And I think once you're I also get fed up with the word woke. But once you are awake to how things have been created through capitalism, through consumerism, we need to consume more, we need to grow more, we need to get more profit, we need to all of these things, then you kind of realize that actually what's important. And I think this goes back to pandemic days when everyone did realize what was important. It wasn't the fancy car they had on their drive because they couldn't drive it anywhere. It was whether they were connected to their neighbors and the fact they couldn't see their friends and they couldn't hug their family. All of a sudden, those were the things that became more important. And what does it cost to do that? Nothing. So you don't need to keep churning out and have a 7-figure salary or any of the other things that we get flogged on all over the place, really.
Mm.
It's this vision of what an ideal life should look like. Actually, an ideal life is just you working out what makes you happy.
Yeah.
And what makes me happy is going to the beach and having a paddle. That'll do. And you don't have to, I could almost walk to my beach. It'd take me about 6 hours, but I could. So those kind of things are for free. So we kind of have to analyze it. And so I think sometimes the people that do have these labels attached to them is only because they don't fit into this sausage machine that society has created for us and doesn't give us the choice. So therefore, you at school, and to a certain extent, me at school, felt really restricted and just it didn't feel right. We weren't a square peg in a square hole. We were desperate to try and escape and get away from it all. I remember going to my first job and I just realized, oh, I've got to be here at 8:30 every morning. I don't get to go home. It's like being in prison till 5 o'clock at night. And it just that bothered me. Where other people, this doesn't bother them at all. Yeah, that's called work. You go there at that time, you have lunch at that time, and you go home at that time. And that felt wrong to me at that point. It didn't feel right at all. So all of us are different. All of us could have some sort of label if those powers that be gave us a label. But it's the labels for me, that difference that makes it exciting. It's like, well, you see the world, your brain goes and mine goes and it's different. And therefore we should come together because we can see the world from different perspectives. So by talking to you and sharing your stuff gives me a totally different perspective on my life and how I can react and how I am, and vice versa, where I've come from, my background, even though we're the same sort of age, you're a youngster compared to me, but even though we're a similar sort of age, we've got totally different experiences, even though we're from the same country and we're both white. We've got totally different experiences in our life because of the way our brains are wired, but also the people that we've met along the way, the food that we've eaten, the reactions that our bodies are given. It's different, and different is good.
Mm.
So tell us now, because one of the things I love about you, Steve, is this: you are a magnet, right? You are this massive magnet for amazing people to come to you. And that has been part of what I have loved about the Undaunted as a community as a place to hang out, as a place to talk to amazing, interesting people. Where did that seed get planted for you to start the Undaunted?
Thank you. I mean, I have been incredibly fortunate, and I really am becoming very aware of how privileged I have been in that I made choices. And I don't know that at the time I really realized that I was making choices, but I made choices to leave home. I made choices to embed myself in punk and in the late 1970s. I made the choice to go to art school and study conceptual thinking. I made the choice to go into the advertising industry in the 1980s as a creative. Um, and because of those early life choices, I was presented with never seek permission or forgiveness. Read after you've done the work. You
Yeah.
get paid more money the more outrageous you are. You're a creative. So go off and be creative. I was given these options to flourish and thrive. And so, my sort of career history isn't really relevant. But to answer your question, having spent my first quarter of my career as a creative and the second sort of third and fourth quarters as a strategist, I arrived at a point, and this is absolutely true. And I won't use the words that I used when I drew this model, but in 2009, having been a strategist working at the highest levels of business, of governments, of civil society organisations and institutions around the world, I realised not only were each of them broken, but none of them were interconnected with each other in the way they should. And I
Mm.
drew a three-circle Venn, which is my favourite thing apart from my family, and I wrote in that these systems were all broken, and that because they were broken, the intersections between them were broken. And so that was really the start of what's now become the Undaunted. And everything in our world is around, well, initially, everything in our world was how can we bring systems, business, main strategic systems in society, business governance, so on, capitalism, democracy, how can we bring these things together? Because they're not really aligned and they're not together at all, they're not interconnected. And we've written about this, how we then spent the next 5 years being wrong because what we shouldn't have been doing was trying to figure out how to bring these together. We should have been taking them apart. And so we started a thing called Institution in 2020, which is hilarious when you spend your time with institutions. We started to work out how to bring people together from across silo sectors and social divides in society. And we started to understand a lot more about the spaces between.
Mm.
So the Undaunted is an organization. We're not a business, we're not a charity, we're not a think tank, we're an organization, and we haven't even got a name for it. But as the great Henry Mintzberg said, just be you. You don't
Yeah, I
need
like that.
another label. So we live in the spaces between social systems, paradigms, belief systems, lived experiences, and so on. And our entire focus is on, and this is something that we've said for years, a human being is born, and that human being will die at some point. That's the only binary system that we actually believe in.
Mm.
And they will live a life. And in fact, they'll live a life that leaves a legacy. So they will, one way or another, live well beyond their life, if that makes sense. So our question always is what happens to that human being throughout their lives? What influences and informs their lived, living and livable experiences? And so the Undaunted is a combination of systemic, and we mean systemic, thinking about the world, about systems and structures and what we can do to change those, or what can we do to create alternative ones where we're not changing current systems, we're just starting from a different place. So that's one side of it, but very much rooted in the lived experiences of ordinary people. There are 8 billion of us on planet Earth, and we've all got stories and we've all got lives. And as you pointed out earlier, we all can learn from each other. In fact, I a couple of years ago wrote a love letter to the world, which I've recently republished, which says almost exactly what you said a few minutes ago. You know, we may have even been in the same places as
Mm.
each other and have fundamentally different memories of them, of that space, of who was there, of what happened, and so on. And isn't that wonderful? You know, the joy that we should be having, and we talk about spreading joy as an act of resilience,
Mm.
the joy rather than the division. And interestingly, my favourite band of all time is Joy Division. And so if you separate out those two, in fact, I've got a thing behind me on the wall.
Yeah.
So no, the Undaunted is a strange mix, deliberately so. We're sort of undefinable, which is a double-edged sword
I love
because
it.
everybody wants labels, and I think removal of labels,
Yeah.
number one priority. You know, I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago who's homeless and been homeless for 18 years.
Wow.
And 18 years ago, they were happily married with a home and a wife, as you are if you're happily married, and two children, and a great career and a great job.
Mm.
And one of the children died by suicide, age 40.
Wow.
And he turned to the alcohol and he turned to the drugs and he lost everything.
Wow.
18 years. That person is labeled a homeless person. They're not. That's a state.
Mm.
But that's not who that. And in fact, when I get invited to speak and I introduce myself, I often say, "Hi, I'm Steve. I'm a granddad and I'm an anarchist."
Yeah.
And if I just told you I was a granddad, you'd have one set of perspectives about me. And if I just told you I was an anarchist, you'd have a completely different set of perspectives. But I
Mm.
am both. And a
Mm.
great deal more besides, because there's only one of me. And I am multifaceted. Who
To
knew?
say the least. To say the least. At Collaboration Global, we talk about human being first. That's the only label you need. Human being first. And because you're a human being, we love you. And then we respect you. And then we trust you. And if you want to lose that respect and trust and love, that's up to you. But that's a given because you're a human being on this planet. And we want to connect with the most powerful resource we have, which is love. And as Buckminster Fuller told us, that's if the epitome of ephemeralization. It's the strongest thing we have on this planet. You can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't touch it necessarily, but you know it's there and it connects you to other human beings. That's the only label that we need. I think as we finally move on after this very short, very exciting conversation, which hopefully one day we will continue, Steve, if you had one wish for our planet, one wish for humanity, one wish for the undaunted, what would that be?
I think in a way we've already spoken about it. My wish is that labels get ripped off.
Yeah.
Rip off the labels. They're artificial. They're not real. They have been used, and as I often write, the measuring stick of rules and norms. Who came up with the rules and norms? But the measuring stick by which we are all measured is used to beat us with.
Mm.
And I'm really, we talk about, and you're absolutely right about love, but I think there's this amazing counterpoint, just as powerful, just as essential to love, which is fury. Not anger, not I want to go and beat people up or destroy things, but fury. I think that's the passion that
Mm.
comes out of both love and fury. I
Mm.
think it's essential. And I do believe that we've all been lulled into unconsciousness over the decades and possibly even centuries, generation after generation. We've sort of been led to fall asleep. We don't need to be involved in anything because other people have got this
Yeah.
because they told us they had.
Yeah.
And it turns out they haven't.
Yeah.
So,
And we're getting to that point that's more and more obvious, isn't it? That the powers that be are just playing a game and we happen to be the pawns. So it's up to us to come together in the Undaunted and in Collaboration Global to show people that there's another way to be, another
and we
way
believe
to
that
connect.
neurodivergence is that way, which is why we started the beautiful collective, which is heroing on neuroconvergence.
Yes. Beautiful. And on that thought, I would like to thank you for being part of the World Mental Health Forum Summit this week. And I look forward to the Q&A session that we will be following up with at a later date. Thank you, Steve. It's really good to catch up and hopefully things will go in your direction and we will catch up with you again very soon.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jill. It's just a joy to talk with you. Thank you.
Take care.